Thank you for joining us this evening for ICA's webinar entitled IC and Disability, the Nuts and Bolts of Filing a Claim. Produced as a companion piece to the Summer 2016 ICA update entitled Navigating Disability, this webinar will focus on the practical aspects of filing an IC disability claim by highlighting firsthand experience from a patient, doctor, and disability claim expert. We will be answering questions throughout the webinar, so please submit your questions by clicking the Questions tab at the top of the webinar screen. Our first speaker this evening is Horine. Catherine is a longtime IC patient and ICA volunteer patient advocate. She was diagnosed with IC in 2002 and successfully won her disability claim in 2010. In 2013, she developed a rare lung disease and underwent a life-saving lung transplant in November of 2014. She currently devotes her time to staying well, volunteering for the ICA and the Respiratory Health Association of Chicago. She also writes a blog entitled Interstitial Cystitis, IC Girl's Journey with IC and Lung Transplant. Catherine, I'm going to send it over to you.
Thank you. Let me hit the next slide. Oh, that's okay. My decision to file for disability was a journey. I was diagnosed in 2002 by a very excellent IC knowledgeable doctor. I was very lucky in that regard, the very first doctor I was sent to. We tried all the standard treatment protocols, and I continued to work for 7 more years. However, the treatment protocols that we tried on me, none of them really worked. The only thing that ever helps me is installations, and I was even trying to do those at my job so that I could continue working. But I finally reached the point where the severity of my IC forced me to sell my home, move in with my parents in order to keep working. And I was suffering a lot. So after discussing my situation with my doctor, he fully supported my decision to apply for disability, which was really important. So the first thing I had to do was file an initial claim for SSDI. And it is a daunting process, but I want to encourage people not to let that stop you. Plow ahead. I chose to work with a non-attorney disability claims representative. That was really helpful to me. He was knowledgeable and really walked me through the process. I filed my first claim in 2009. And as is the case with many IC patients who are out there, I was denied on my first claim, and we had to go through the appeals process. And of course, that's very scary for everybody, and it's very disappointing. But for me, and I believe for every patient who feels that they really need disability, giving up isn't an option if you are truly unable to work. I did a lot of preparation. I worked in conjunction side by side with my disability claims representative in order to gather my medical files. He had a lot of questions I had to answer that he thought were relevant to the appeals process. I made sure part of my job of filing my appeal was that I kept my doctor appointments. I went to everyone, and he documented every appointment, what we did, so that I had good documentation. And he was so supportive, and he really went to bat for me. He wrote me a letter that I truly believe had an impact on the decision, whether I was approved or not. Brought tears to my eyes when I read it. Still does. So then we filed the appeal, and then you wait. And it took agonizingly long time for me, in my opinion. I had to wait a full year before I heard anything. And when I did hear, I was very lucky and blessed to have been approved. My appeal was approved. I know a lot of patients out there go through multiple appeals and end up in front of a disability judge. If this happens, I urge you, don't give up, but get an attorney. Attorneys, I found, and I will let the disability expert speak more to this, but the reason I went with a non-attorney claims representative was because I couldn't get help from attorney until I had filed and been denied. And then they said, call us back. They just all told me, call us back when you get denied, and then we'll help you with your appeal. So, but I had help right from the beginning. So if you file your original claim, get denied, then go get yourself a disability attorney. I think it's absolutely necessary. So one of the things that I found was really necessary as I went through the process from beginning to end and through the appeals section was that I had to make sure that in my case, my representative, or in many cases an attorney, really understood what IC is and how it can impact all areas of your life, making disability a necessity, because he was looking at it like I was fine. I mean, I had this disease, but I was working, and then all of a sudden one day I couldn't work any longer. And I got all my medical records from my doctor, which was at that point about 800 pages. And I said to him, I handed them to him, and I said, no, I didn't just decide one day I couldn't work. Look through these 800 pages of medical documentation, all the treatments we tried that didn't work. And I got to this point through all this time, through 7 years, because nothing's working. And when nothing's working and you're in this pain for 7 years and you're sleep deprived, I arrived at this place of needing disability over the course of the 7 years of treatment that my doctor was giving me. It wasn't just, and he was thinking, well, you were working, and now you're not. So that was important that he understood that, you've gone through this process of treatment and you didn't just get there overnight. So you need to make sure they understand IC, how you arrived at the place you are today. You didn't just walk into a doctor's office and decide today that you're disabled. Make sure that they're aware of the Social Security policy interpretation ruling on IC, and that it's a condition that you can file for disability under. That will help them to understand how IC can be a cause for disability. So I think it's really important to print that out and give it to your attorney or whoever is helping you so that they understand the Social Security side of it. A lot of the Social Security people aren't going to know what IC is. They're never going to have heard of it. If they see this, they will see their own policy interpretation ruling, and it will help them look at your claim, and they'll be like, oh, well, we have a ruling on this. So clearly we've addressed this issue. So I think it's utmost important that you get that and give it to your attorney and anybody else, whether your attorney or a non-attorney person is helping you. So your resources, your doctor, I believe, is your number one resource. I was very lucky, and I know a lot of people aren't, but I had a very IC knowledgeable doctor who actually wanted me to go out on disability 2 years before I did. He understood my pain. He'd seen nothing that he tried help me. He didn't think it was all in my head or that I was trying to be a gold brick and not work. And he actually was the one who encouraged me to file. And so a good relationship with your doctor, good documentation with your doctor. I feel it's our job to keep all our appointments as much as we can. I know people have financial issues and distance issues. My doctor's not close, but I made sure that I had, like I said, I had 800 pages of medical information that I gave to my representative, and we used about 500 of those in my appeal, and I think that made a difference. The ICA website is chock full of excellent information that you can get your hands on if you just go to the ichelp.org and go to the disability section and start reading through it. You can find out a lot of information that can be helpful. Tell your attorney to go there. I think if they aren't familiar with IC, they don't understand why you're filing, give them the ICA website address and the disability section and have them read through it, and I think it could be helpful. And then the ICA disability kit is an excellent tool for helping you get organized to present your appeal going forward. I really think it's worth the price. If you can't afford it, ask for it for a present instead of a birthday present, or, that's what I would do with my family when funds were running tight. I'd say, I don't want presents. Can you get me my membership to the ICA so I can get the ICA update and things of that nature. So, if you can't afford the packet, ask somebody to give it to you for your birthday present or something, because you don't want to miss out on your, winning your claim if possible. As I said, make sure you have a good relationship with your doctor. Without their help, you very likely won't win your claim. The medical aspect is very important, having the proper documentation, making sure that they believe that you are worthy of disability and are willing to go so far as to write a letter to that effect. If you truly need disability, never give up. I know that a lot of people have been through, the whole process where they've gone before a judge and they still have lost. It's my understanding and that even if you've gone that far and you've still lost, you can start all over again after a period of time. Just keep fighting for what you believe you deserve and probably do. Going on disability wasn't an easy decision. I don't think it's an easy decision for anybody. We don't want to do it. I think most of us want to work. We don't want to, disability isn't fun. It's not vacation. And it's a whole change of mindset. But if you need it, you need it. So do what's best for your situation. But if you feel you need to be on disability and you can't work, then my advice is to keep fighting. It's not fun. It's a hard and challenging process, and very scary. I was lucky I had family I could live with, but a lot of people don't. So, if you can get help from friends and family and your church group or whatever to help you get through this process. Do whatever it takes to fight for your disability and your rights. So that's what I have to say about that. Don't give up.
Catherine, we have a couple of questions for you. The first one is, what was the final straw that actually made you decide to apply for disability?
Well, I have to tell you, I had tried to keep working, and it was surprising to me that I was so determined that I wanted to keep working that I didn't want to give up. I felt like I was giving in to the IC if I stopped working and filed for disability. Not to mention it was scary. I finally had gotten my doctor to say, you need to go out on at least some short-term disability. And I did that for a period of time. And that's the point at which my doctor said, you really should go on permanent disability. Now, I said, no, I want to keep trying. And I tried for 2 more years. But what happened was my office, which was at one point a 30-minute commute, moved, and it became a 2-hour commute. And I was bringing my installation supplies and everything to work, giving myself installations in the office. Not an easy thing to do. I had to come up with how can I make this work so that I can give myself an installation before I leave for the 2-hour train ride. And it all became too much. I was just so exhausted, overwhelmed, and in pain, and riding that train for 2 hours every day was really taking its toll. And it just so happened I had an appointment with my physician when I was going through this in my head, and he was actually the person, my doctor was the last straw, frankly, because he looked at me sobbing in his office and never lost patience with me. And he believed that I deserved it, that it was something that was necessary for my well-being to give me some sort of quality of life, which he believed was the point of going on disability. Like we said, it's not vacation, it's not, retirement, and it's not fun. But it's to try and give you some sort of quality of life so that you're not fighting having to go to a job and stay awake if you're sleep deprived and so forth. So he really believed that I was worthy, and that gave me a change of mindset. And once I accepted that I was worthy, that I wasn't going to be a gold brick and a lazy person, because I was going on disability, I was able to accept that this is what I really needed to do for my well-being, and that's when I made the decision to file.
Thank you very much, Catherine, for your input on this. Our next speaker is Dr. Robert Evans. Dr. Evans is an associate professor of urology at Wake Forest University, a well-known and well-loved compassionate clinician. Dr. Evans is also a well-known IC researcher and medical educator. Dr. Evans is board certified, a fellow in the American College of Surgeons, and is currently the principal investigator on a clinical trial evaluating a new drug for treating this condition. Dr. Evans, I'm going to send it over to you.
Oh, excuse me. Thanks so much. Just want to make sure that I can get this to advance. Let's see. Well, I don't know why it's not advancing. All right. Sorry.
I can advance the slides for you.
Okay, that's great. I'm not sure why that's not working because it worked all right. Okay. Well, it's a pleasure to speak to everybody tonight, and I wanted to give you my input as to someone who has helped quite a number of patients to get their disability. And often I'll have somebody who just has hit the end of the line, and they say, I can't do this anymore. And they want to know, can I write them out and get them disability? And the reality is that it is not the doctor who gets you the disability. This is a federal program, and only the Social Security Administration or a designated administrative law judge can declare you're disabled. But your doctor is very important helping you to that point. If you're at a place where the urgency, the frequency, the pain, and all the treatment side effects have made it impossible for you to continue to work, you can and you should apply for disability benefits. And it's important to start the process as soon as you're certain that you've gotten to that point. It's a hard decision to make. It's one that's fraught with some feelings of guilt and loss. But even if you're doing okay financially at that point, this is a long-term thing. It's a long process. So you want to make sure that you get that process started right away. Okay, next slide. Could you advance the slide, please? Thanks. So one of the things that patients who are, no, sorry, go back to that one before. Okay, so a lot of patients will say, gosh, I feel like I'm a loser, I've given up. And this is the thing I think is important. You did not ask to have IC. You didn't want this disease. Nobody wants to have this. And it's never your fault. It's not something you did. It's not something you deserve. It's just something you have. And unfortunately, it is a disease that can progress to the point in which people really are disabled. If you're going to the bathroom every 15 or 20 minutes, if you're having to do installations in the office, if your pain is poorly controlled and you're taking medications that cause you to be sedated or unable to concentrate, it's inappropriate for you to try to continue to work. So Social Security Disability is a federal program designed to help people with health conditions like that, and it is funded by deductions taken from your paycheck over the years. So it's really important to realize that this is not a charity. It's a benefit that you help pay for. So please don't feel bad about yourself or feel like you're some way not living up to people's expectations if you make the decision that you have to go ahead and apply for disability. Can I have the next one, please? So how many people try this and are they successful? So a recent ICA survey showed that about 29% of the people who responded to the survey had actually applied for disability. And 64% of those were successful. And frankly, that's a little better than the population of at large of people who apply for disability. And some of those others were still in the appeals process. Now, one of the things we know is that most people do not get benefits with the initial application. But in this group, 23% were able to do that. But most people have to resort to more than one appeal. And I always emphasize to folks that you're likely to have to go through the appeal process, so kind of to be prepared for that. And unfortunately, this process can take 3 to 4 years. And so I think the most important advice is that if you make the decision that you can't work, you want to get started early, because even if you have adequate funds today, those funds can run out, and you want to make sure you get started quickly. Okay, the next slide, please. So how do I get started? So again, as I emphasized earlier, it really is a medical process. It's not a charity. The important thing is you need appropriate medical documentation to prove that you can no longer work. And the next thing I think is really important. You want records from every treating physician dating back to the onset of your symptoms. If it took you several urologists or different doctors of different types to get to the point where you have an IC diagnosis, get that information, because you would like to establish when this problem started. I advise people to try to keep a voiding diary that they can then provide in the packet of the material that they put together, indicating how many times you urinate. It's one thing to write down that, I void 20 times a day, but an actual documented log that demonstrates you really are in the bathroom every 30 minutes does have a visual impact and makes a difference. I think the same is true with a pain log or a symptom score, in which you document day by day where you are on a 1 to 10 scale. Because if you're consistently demonstrating pain scores of 7, 8, 9, 10, even with appropriate therapy or even pain management, it's important to understand that's going to make a big difference. So the more detail you can give, including every treatment, every side effect, and how it affected your ability to work, because even if you are actually making some progress in terms of controlling your symptoms, it's a problem if some of the required therapies are really sedating, like antidepressants, antihistamines. That may impact your ability to work as well. Can I have the next one, please? So people put their application and they're rejected, and patients tend to want to take that and say that, you know, they must not have believed me. And I have to assure you, it has absolutely nothing to do with whether they believe you or don't believe you, and whether they like you or don't like you. What it has to do is whether you have a listed diagnosis or not. Now, there is a list of diagnoses that sort of automatically get you disability, and it's a very small list, and it's likely to never get any bigger. It's called the Blue Book. It's a Social Security thing. And IC is not a listed diagnosis. However, it is listed as something that can be rated. And what we mean by rating is that the Social Security Administration or the administrative law judge can decide how severe is your disease. And so IC is now on the list of diseases that can be taken into consideration in determining if somebody has a disability claim that should be upheld, but it's not an automatic, so it's not a listed diagnosis, but it's one that can be rated or taken into consideration. Now, until about 14, 15 years ago, it was actually not even listed at all. I went with the ICA to the Social Security Disability and gave them some testimony which got it on the list, and since that time, we've been able to use this to get people their disability coverage. Okay, next slide, please. So who looks at the records you sent? I think this is important. Your initial application is reviewed by clerical people. These are not judges. And reality is it's very difficult for them to grant you benefits unless you have one of those listed conditions. So only about a third of applicants who are approved at this level, but you do have the right for an automatic appeal. And I can't emphasize enough, you have to use this and go ahead and move on to the next level. In my experience, even at that level, you're still not seeing a judge, so even that first appeal tends not to be that successful. But it's a process that you have to go through, and so you just have to learn not to take this personally, and you have to kind of learn to work the system a little bit. Okay, can we have the next one, please? So I have numerous other conditions. So most IC patients have other concomitant illnesses. We routinely have patients with irritable bowel syndrome, chronic fatigue syndrome, vulvodynia, fibromyalgia, depression, anxiety, endometriosis. I think it's important that you list every one of those conditions as long as you have somebody who will document that you have it. You just can't say I'm fatigued and therefore I have chronic fatigue syndrome, or my bowel is crampy so I have irritable bowel. You want to have an official diagnosis. And you do want to have the ability to get documentation for this. Now, if you have other conditions, I think it's crucial that you include those in your document file, because maybe the administration is going to look at this and say, well, I don't think her IC is that bad, but when you add all these other things together, this is pretty overwhelming. And certainly I know when you get to the level of the judge, they're going to take that into consideration. So you want to try to get all your doctors involved and get all this information as well documented as you can. Next, please. Okay, so what do I need my doctor to do, because I don't think he wants to help? Okay, here's what you really need from me. You need a detailed summary of your condition, including all past and present treatments, with an emphasis on how it makes you unable to work. And you really do have to have some detail on this. So when I put letters together, I emphasize the degree of pain, the number of voids that have to occur during the day, and I try to reference a voiding diary. And then I put some emphasis on the cognitive effects of medication, especially pain medications, as well as the effect of sleep deprivation. Because clearly we don't want people in the workplace making important judgments who are chronically sleep deprived or having to take pain medication. And then there's a couple little tidbits that I like to put in every letter. And these are two known facts that are in the literature. The first is that IC patients tend to report quality of life scores worse than patients on dialysis, and that their pain is more severe than Crohn's disease. And the reason that I think things like that are helpful is that if you have a Social Security person, or you have a judge who really are not that attuned to IC and they just think it's kind of a bad case of overactive bladder, when you point out these quality of life issues or you point out the severity of the pain, it makes this a little more real to them. So you want to really make sure that the letter from your doctor has all that information. Can I have the next slide, please? So when do you need to get a lawyer or somebody to assist you with this? And I know that in my area, I really only have access to attorneys to do Social Security disability. But you need to have somebody who is expert in this. And if it's an attorney or a non-attorney may not matter as long as this is something they're experienced in. The key is they have to be expert in Social Security disability. And this is not the time to get your brother-in-law or your buddy doing you a favor who really doesn't know the process. And in my opinion, most lawyers are not going to want to get involved until you're into the appeal process, but then they really are essential. And so I usually advise people, knowing that they're probably going to get turned down the first go-around, to just go ahead and put that application in and get it over with and then get involved in the appeal process where the attorney or the representative can be more helpful and their expertise comes into play. Okay, next slide, please. So how can the doctor help the attorney? What I always want to know is I want whether they want a narrative summary or if they want me to complete a form listing exactly what the patient can or cannot do. And there are a number of organizations, and one I've had experience with is a company that's, I never know if they call it Binder and Binder or Binder and Binder, but it's a form that is used for attorneys for support in this, and they've got forms that will list exactly what a patient can or cannot do, and there are separate ones that can be used for IC, irritable bowel, fibromyalgia. And this is documentation that really does list your limitations that I think does take into account things like flares, sleep deprivation, and all the other things that are really part and parcel of the IC symptoms. And that is something that's really helpful. And if the attorney wants that, we're happy to do it. If they ask for a summary, we can do that as well. But we do want to make sure that we give them what they need because they're the one that's going to have to go before the judge and argue this. And we want to give them the tools that they need to be successful. Okay, the next one, please. So why in the world does it take so long? Why should it take 3 to 4 years? Well, 620,000 applications are in the system, and then because a lot get rejected, there's 1.1 million in appeal. And I think that the system is set up designed to make sure that no one gets benefits they don't deserve. So it's really not designed to be simple or quick. It's designed to be thorough and make sure the people that get the benefits deserve it. So I always say don't take it personally if you get rejected. Just keep moving through the process. Do your best, get the appropriate documentation, and be persistent. You know, the thing that's important is a judge will often grant benefits back to the day you actually became disabled. So you want to make sure that you really have good documentation of when you actually had to stop working, and often that you can get a lot of money given back to you at that point. Have the next slide, please. So here are final thoughts. That ICA disability kit is extremely helpful, and one thing that may happen is after you've gone through some of that, you actually may know more about the process of disability applications than your doctor, because unlike other specialties, urologists are rarely involved with disability claims. Other specialties like orthopedic surgeons do this on a routine basis. So you do need to be patient. This is not easy to do. It is time consuming on our part, and we don't always have that time. So there's a couple things that I think do sometimes work out. One is consider making an appointment just to sit down and work on these forms or the summary together. And often you can make sure that they put down on there exactly what you want it to look like. Because sometimes I may not exactly know how much you can lift or how much you have to do on your job. That extra, having that personal input when I'm working on this is actually pretty helpful. And certainly some physicians in some offices are going to charge you for this, and that is legal and acceptable. I don't personally do that, but if that happens, you just have to go ahead and go with that. But you do want to try to be collaborative and cooperative because you want all of your doctors to do this. It's not just the urologist. It's also your general surgeon or your GI doctor, your orthopedic person, or your rheumatologist, or whomever's taking care of all these illnesses. The more documentation you get, the better off your chances are. Have the next slide, please. And then so even a seasoned disability attorney who's done a lot of disability cases may not understand the IC. So you need to provide them some information, and what you can get from the IC is really a big help. So if you put together a team with a quality attorney or somebody else who's qualified in helping people navigate through Social Security disability, and get all of your physicians together and put it all together in a nice package, you really are likely to succeed. And this has been my experience. The judge has got a big load of cases to get through. And if you have everything tied up in a bundle that looks like it's put together appropriately and you've got an attorney or a representative that knows the system, they are almost certainly going to give you the approval you want. If you come in there and you don't have appropriate representation and you haven't done your homework and you don't have everything, then they're going to look at everything with a very critical eye, and you're much more likely to get rejected. So getting things in order, getting it put together makes the biggest difference. I think that's my last slide. Thanks.
Dr. Evans, we do have several questions for you.
Okay.
The biggest question I have that people are writing are, my doctor doesn't think I need to be on disability and doesn't want to support my claim. What can I do now?
Well, I think there's a couple of options. The first is that, I'm assuming that, like most IC patients, you probably have some other physicians that treat you. And so if that's the case, you need to go through all of your doctors to see. While it's nice to have a letter from everybody, if you have a letter from one of your principal doctors, that might be enough. But I think if you really feel that the linchpin you need is to have documentation of your interstitial cystitis, then I would consider going for a second opinion. And I would try to find a doctor that's going to be more supportive of you. Let me give you one caveat. It's really problematic if somebody walks in the door, sees me the first time, and hands me a disability file, because I just will not fill that out, because I think it's inappropriate, because I need to know that patient a little bit. I can't write a good letter if I've only seen them one time. I can't really be given any credibility to any statements that I would make saying, we've tried this, we've tried that. But I just think if somebody's not willing to work with you on something that's important, I would get a second opinion simply to try to get a doctor that's more attuned to your needs. And so I would go and not necessarily say, look, I'm looking for somebody to help me get disability, even though that may be part of what you need, as much as you have to say to whoever you're going to meet, I'm looking for somebody who will care for me and will will work with me and try to help me. And I just feel like I've kind of lost that relationship with my previous physician. So if they really, truly are putting up a big stink about this, I would try to move on.
We have a follow-up question that's kind of similar. The question is my doctor won't help me because there's, quote, unquote, too much paperwork involved. Is that true? How much work does a doctor actually have to do to help me with my case?
It's a lot of work. I mean, to do an appropriate. I mean, if you really have a complex patient with a very long file that you have to go through, and I actually thought it was easier back in the days when it was on paper. I think finding all this stuff in the electronic systems is actually quite hard, but it might take an hour, and so none of us have an hour. I mean, it's really hard to do. I tend to do them when I'm on call, and I sit there and block out a lot of time. But no, I understand that the desire of people not to do this. It's not fun. It's not something for which you get compensated, but it's sometimes the right thing to do. And so, sometimes you just have to do things that are the right thing for the patient. And I think when a patient has is deserving of a claim, I want to do everything I can to try to help him or her get that claim. So, I think they may complain a little bit, but sometimes you just have to do the right thing. And there again, I think if you are really getting that level of pushback and you're not having your needs met, then I would just try to find somebody else who could help you.
And the one last question that, again, ties all of this in. You made a comment earlier in your presentation stating that sometimes it's best to make an appointment to go over the paperwork. Will most doctors be receptive to that if you actually say to them, can I make an appointment to talk to you about my case? Is that more acceptable?
I don't know that I would tell them what I was doing. I would come in there and say, I don't know. I can't answer that question because I only know myself. And if someone comes in and brings that paperwork, I will work with them right there and then and try to get it taken care of. So, to me, if I've got them there to answer the questions that I'm maybe not completely sure of as to when did you actually go out on disability, because often they want an exact date. The patient will know, but I won't. So to me, it's just easier. But I don't know that I would make an appointment to go over this and to say, listen, I've got this, I need to do this, can you help me? I mean, I don't see any problem with that, but that personally would not bother me. I can't speak for everybody, though. I wish I could.
Thank you very much for your time. Our final speaker today is Ed Swierczek, who's a senior claimant representative for a company called Allsup. Mr. Swierczek offers 40 years of expertise in Social Security claims, disability claims, and appeals process, including 27 years with the Disability Determination Service as Assistant Direct Supervisor and Quality Assurance Specialist with the State of Missouri DDS. He joined Allsup in 2000 as a senior claimant representative and represents people with disabilities during the hearing levels of the Social Security Disability Insurance application process. His current responsibilities include preparing and submitting detailed legal briefs to administrative law judges in an effort to secure on-the-record Social Security Disability Award decisions. Ed, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be here this evening in order to speak to you about Social Security Disability. But before I get into the nuts and bolts of filing for Social Security Disability, I'd like to address some important issues relative to IC. Probably one of the most important things that happened within the last year or so is Social Security has a new updated ruling on IC. It's called Social Security Ruling 15-1P, and it tells how to evaluate IC. And now, in my opinion, having Social Security come out with this ruling gives even further support and credence to a claim for disability based on IC. This is important because Social Security Disability is a medically based program, and they continue to concede that IC is a medically determinable impairment. Though IC is not in Social Security's listing of impairments, it can still be medically equating a listing. What the Social Security does is they look at the condition, they look at all the signs, symptoms, findings, and then make a decision whether it medically equates one of the listings that are in that listing book. The blue book, as Dr. Evans called it. Now, they also consider comorbid conditions with IC that can help equate a medical listing. Now, one of the things I like to point out is don't wait to file a claim. Based on my 40-plus years of experience in the Social Security Disability Program, I must differ somewhat, and respectfully so, with Dr. Evans, who advised you wait to the appeal level to get a representative. I would encourage everyone to get a representative at the initial level of the application. As you know, more than two-thirds of people filing an initial disability case are denied. And also, we obtain benefits for 56% of our claimants at the initial level, nearly 70% higher than Social Security's award rate at the initial level. Furthermore, at the hearing level, Social Security's award rate in 2015 was 45%. And also, with a representative, our award rate at the hearing level was 76%. Again, nearly 70% higher than Social Security's. So it's quite important to secure a representative who knows the Social Security Disability Program. Additionally, I encourage you to file a Social Security Disability claim as soon as you're unable to work due to your IC and any other comorbid conditions. And I say this because Social Security only pays benefits 12 months prior to the date of filing. So if you wait several years to file for Social Security Disability and you are found disabled at the time you quit work, you're going to lose months and perhaps years of benefits that you could have gotten if you would have filed timely. So once again, keep that in mind. The minute you can't work because of your condition, file your claim. It's to your benefit. And as Dr. Evans pointed out, you paid for this right, utilize it. As Dr. Evans explained, he said, talk to your doctor. Always talk to your doctor. Doctor support is vital in any disability case, but even more so in an IC case. Just don't ask your doctor to state you are disabled. Keep in mind the finding of disabled is only permitted to be done by the Commissioner of Social Security or his agents. This is consistent with Social Security Disability being a medical, legal, and administrative program. So it's a combination of all three. It's medical, it's legal, and it's administrative. Also, lay evidence is quite important in an IC case. Securing a supportive letter from your employer can be very helpful in your case, demonstrating the difficulties you experienced at work due to IC. Also, I suggest, as it's been mentioned before, keeping a log of how IC affects your daily life. How often do you have to urinate, frequency and severity of the pain you're experiencing, and so on. The more evidence, medical and lay, you secure in support of your case, the stronger your claim becomes. So all these things are important. And
Ed,
lastly,
Ed, would you like me to advance your slides?
no, we can do it here. That's not a problem.
Okay.
I just want to make one last point before we get to the slides, and I'll try to talk fast. If you're awarded Social Security disability, do not look upon this as this is it. I have no future. Just because you're awarded disability benefits, not all people are disabled forever. Recovery is possible for some. Additionally, if you are disabled and want to work, Social Security has multiple incentives to help you return to work while still receiving your disability benefits. So I just wanted to preface this slide presentation with those few notes relative to IC. Let me tell you about the current situation. Social Security has nearly 2.5 million applications pending. The overall award rate is now only 32% at the initial level, down from 35% in 2009. As of July of this year, there were over 1 million plus cases pending at the hearing level, which is nearly double what it was just 5, 6, 7 years ago. So the backlog of cases is over 2 million. So as you can see, it's going to take a long time to get through this if you don't have proper representation or medical evidence or the evidence to support your case. Now, Social Security is actually a federally insured program. It's an insurance program like any other program that's insurance. You have to meet the requirements. And it's funded by your payroll taxes, your FICA taxes, 6.2% for Social Security, and a small portion of that goes to SSDI. To qualify, you have to be currently insured, and I'm not going to go into detail on all these, but there are credits that you have to earn, and you can learn more about how to earn work credits on the handout in our attachment. So we do have a number of attachments that are available for you. Now, I do want to point out the benefits of receiving Social Security disability, a monthly income. And you can see the average monthly income based on for a disabled individual was about $1,165 in 2016 and $1,976 for a disabled worker with a family. You get medical benefits. You become entitled to Medicare 24 months after your entitlement to cash benefits under Social Security disability. So that helps cover some of your medical expenses, which includes drug coverage, Medicare Part D. You have protected retirement benefits, and that's probably quite important, and most people aren't aware of that. Social Security disability freezes your Social Security earnings record during the time you are disabled. For example, let's say you're receiving long-term disability benefits at age 40, and they're going to pay you until age 65, and then the benefits are going to stop. There are no other benefits. So you will have 25 years of zeros if you do not file for Social Security and receive Social Security disability. Social Security calculates your retirement benefits based on your top 35 years of earnings. So as you can see, it is quite possible if you became disabled at age 40, never got Social Security benefits, you went to get your Social Security retirement, you could wind up just getting a few dollars a month. In fact, I'm aware of one person receiving $3 a month in Social Security retirement benefits. So it's vital that if you are disabled, to file for Social Security disability. Social Security has return to work incentives where you can try to work and still receive your disability payments. It protects other income benefits. If you are receiving long-term disability, most long-term disability carriers require you to file for disability. And if you don't, they're going to offset it as if you were receiving it. So it protects those long-term disability benefits. And there's also dependent SSDI coverage. This means if you're found disabled and you're getting $1,200 a month, and if you have 2 children, they will get half of your $1,200 divided between the 2 children. Each one would get $300 each, $600 at $1,200. So you can learn more about everything I'm talking about if you see the logo down at the bottom. It's all in our attachments. Now, in order to be eligible for Social Security disability, you have to have a medically determinable physical and mental impairment. that prevents you from engaging in any substantial gainful activity that's expected to last at least 12 months or result in death. Now, substantial gainful activity for the year 2016 is $1,130 a month. So if you earn that, you're not going to qualify for Social Security disability, even though you may well be markedly impaired. Now, to qualify, you have to meet the criteria above. You must have worked and paid FICA taxes. You haven't reached retirement age, which is either 65 to 67, and you have to be 21 years of age or older and less than retirement age. Now, Social Security has a 5-step process. It's called sequential evaluation. And as I mentioned earlier, the first step is if you're engaging in substantial gainful activity, which is $1,130 a month in 2016, Social Security will say no matter how impaired you are, you're going to be found not disabled because you are earning SGA. If you're not earning SGA, they move on to the second step of sequential evaluation, which is you have to have an impairment, a medically determinable severe impairment, that creates some significant problems in performing work activities that are listed: walking, standing, lifting, bending, stooping, hearing. And if you do have a severe medically determinable impairment, then Social Security will go on to the next step of sequential evaluation, which is step 3. And that's where the Blue Book comes into play. It talks about meeting a medical listing or equating a medical listing. And as it was pointed out earlier, there is no medical listing for IC. However, IC still can be considered to be medically equated depending upon its severity and if there are any comorbid impairments that are involved with IC. If you don't meet or equal a medical listing, then Social Security is required, and I might add that this 5-step process is applied at every level of Social Security. This is the manner in which they adjudicate all cases. So at step 4, our Social Security will look at whether you have the ability, the residual functional capacity, to engage in any substantial gainful activity or your past work, or rather your past work. If you don't have the ability to engage in your past work, then they will look at step 5, which says, depending upon your age, your education, and your work experience, and your physical limitations or mental limitations, are you able to do some other work? If you are not able to do some other work, then Social Security says you are disabled. So many cases, especially at the hearing level, are awarded based on step 5. The judge will go through all these steps and then arrive at step 5 saying, well, you're now 55 years old, you have an 11th grade education, you have a history of heavy work, there's no possible way you can work based on your residual functional capacity or the limitations you have. Social Security, SSI, Social Security Income, or SSI, is a welfare-based program. The requirements are identical to Social Security disability. As far as the sequential evaluation process, all these things are essentially the same. But it's a bigger welfare-type program in the sense that it pays money to people 65 or older, the disabled or the blind, and it even includes children under the age of 18. So there are listings for children, and that's another category that we're not dealing with at this point in time. Now I'll talk about the application process. It consists of 5 levels. Most of the individuals, or many of the individuals, will get frustrated with the denial percentages and never continue with the process. But as was pointed out before by Catherine and Dr. Evans, can fight, continue, don't give up, keep filing. That's the important thing. If you feel you're indeed disabled and you can't work, don't stop trying. At step 1, or level 1, is the initial application. That's where you go to your local Social Security office, or you have a representative help you complete the forms and submit them for you. There's a mandatory waiting period for benefits if you are found disabled of 5 full calendar months. Therefore, let's say, for example, you were found disabled on June 2nd of 2016. You would have to wait until December of 2016 for your first benefit, cash benefit. And then you become entitled to Medicare in December of 2018, 24 months after that date. So that's the initial application. Social Security takes it, they send it over to the Disability Determination Services, DDS. They collect all the medical evidence, and then they evaluate it, they submit it, and they make their decision. And as we said earlier, they denied more than 2/3 of the cases at the initial level. Then you have the right to file for a reconsideration in most states. There are what are called prototype states. There are 9 states, and then part of California that says we're going to go directly to the hearing from the initial level. But back to the reconsideration, you file for reconsideration. It goes back to the same DDS that denied you before. However, it goes to a different adjudicator. But as you can see, the award rate is very, very low, about 11% at reconsideration. When you get denied at the reconsideration, you'll take the next step to go to the hearing before an administrative law judge. I know very few people that are excited to go before a judge. So consequently, many a person drops out after the reconsideration level because, they're concerned. They're afraid. They don't want to see a judge. For whatever reason they have, many, many people don't continue to pursue because, as has been said before, continue to pursue. Social Security, the district office, the field office takes the application, they send it over to the hearing office, and then at this point in time, you get to wait and wait and wait. It's up to 2 years now in some offices before you will even have a hearing. So that's why, as I stated before, get a representative early. You have a greater chance of getting awarded. You don't have to wait so many years to get a hearing. And then if the judge denies your case, and as you can see, only 45% got awarded, so 55% didn't, you'd have to go to the appeals council. Now, if it's the same process, you go to the district office, you file an application, they send it to the appeals council, and at the appeals council, it typically takes almost 2 years before you get any kind of decision from them, and 99% of the time, the letter you're going to get in the mail is it's going to say, we're not going to pay your case, 99% of the time. If you get denied at level 4, the hearing level, our appeals council, then you go to the federal district court. At this level, you have to have an attorney. Non-attorney reps cannot practice for federal district court, and 98% of the claims at the federal district court are denied at this level. So as you can see, it's a very, very grueling process. And why do people need help? Well, the process is complicated and intimidating. There are multiple forms that need to be filled out. If you make a mistake on any of those forms and it doesn't help your case, Social Security in their adjudication of the case will use exactly what you put down, not to get your case awarded, but they're going to use it to get your case denied. Now, there are no fees unless benefits are awarded. It's governed by law. Social Security says that if a representative gets a claimant awarded, then we're entitled to 25% of your one-time retroactive payment, and that's capped at $6,000. So, for example, and I've seen this before, you had a $100,000 retroactive payment. You're not going to have to pay $25,000. You're only going to pay $6,000 to the representative. And also, we don't charge for out-of-pocket expenses such as medical records, phone calls, travel, etc. We cover all of that. We just have our one-time fee, and that's it. You can get an assessment free at expert.allsup.com. And as I said, down at the bottom, there's a logo that shows you can look at one of our attachments, and it'll give you further information. We even have a website that you can complete in order to see if you're eligible for Social Security disability at your leisure. And that's the important thing is it's at your leisure. You can take your time, you sign up, you go through the assessment, you learn what it's all about, you apply, and then as we say, relax. I had mentioned earlier in my, before talking about the nuts and bolts of disability, about returning to work. Social Security has a program called Ticket to Work, and it supports career development by providing choices. Now, if you're awarded Social Security disability benefits, they will send you a ticket in the mail. It's red, white, and blue. And it says that if you want to try to work, take this to an employer network, and they will help you get a return to work. So it's important. It's a very helpful thing. As this slide shows, for an SSDI assessment, you just go to expert.allsup.com, and that's essentially it. And thanks for your time and attention.
You went through a lot of information in a really small amount of time. I give you credit for that.
I had to talk fast.
We do have some questions for you, Ed. One of the first questions is, and you've kind of already talked about this, but really what's the difference between a claims representative and a disability lawyer, and when do we need to get which person?
Well,
So
I can tell you this based on.
Go ahead.
I can tell you this based on my experience from individuals that I've dealt with who use lawyers, is that attorneys don't always call them back in a timely manner, if at all. I can't speak for other non-attorney reps, but it also, you have a team of people working on your case, and you can call us or chat with someone online 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So we're available 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. Also, attorneys may charge out-of-pocket costs for medical records, travel, postage, etc. And also, we only charge a representative fee. We have no other cost. And lastly, just because an attorney says they're a disability attorney doesn't necessarily mean they know Social Security disability. If you've been involved in the Social Security disability program and worked in the actual adjudication of cases, then you certainly have a far greater background than most attorneys. And we take cases at all levels. We never, ever have a person call us and say, well, we want to file for disability, and we don't ever tell them to say, well, come back when you've been denied. We help people from day one, and to me, that's a considerable difference. Any other questions?
We have another question. It says, how does being on disability affect my taxes?
Now, keep in mind, I'm not a tax expert. However, I may point out that we have a personal finance tab at allsup.com that has tax information and other helpful financial planning tips for individuals with disabilities where you can get detailed information. So I don't purport to be a tax expert, but we do have information in our website that will help answer any of those questions pertaining to taxes, because we have people that just do that.
Okay, and this last question for Ed, this one's a little complicated. How do you fight an appeal granted on the basis that you were not seeking adequate medical treatment during the 180 benefit period if you had no income and no insurance? In addition, I lost my job and my insurance as a result.
I really don't understand the question. Not to me.
Okay. I don't understand the question either, so maybe they can resubmit it a little bit differently. The last question I have is, what do I do if I have disability but it's still not enough to live on?
Well, Social Security pays benefits based on your income. And consequently, there's nothing more that you're going to be able to get from Social Security disability. However, if you feel you can do something, then if they would exercise their ticket to work, they can return to work, continue to receive their disability benefits for at least 9 months, because Social Security will grant you what's called a trial work period. So you can earn an unlimited amount of money during that time frame. However, if you're on ticket to work, you can continue to work and not have your benefits stop. So that's an option to take of ticket to work. So that could help them if they feel they are able to work. If they truly feel that they're not able to work, then there's not much that we can offer, because Social Security is not going to increase any benefits. And in fact, if you look on the slide, it talks about where to call for ticket to work to get more information. There's also a website.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple minutes left, so I'm going to go back to a couple of other questions. This one is for Dr. Evans. Dr. Evans, the question states, I have a lot of doctors for various illnesses. What can I do to have my doctors talk to each other? Is that even possible?
No, and honestly, I think it's probably a little bit unreasonable to expect that you're going to have guys in a busy schedule sit down and make a lot of phone calls. I think that, certainly we may, if we're all working in the same system, we can get together and yet I think it's unrealistic to think if you've got doctors all over the place think that they can spend a lot of time conversing about your problem. I wish I could tell you that we could do better, but you know, if you're seeing 120 or more patients a week, there's just not the time to actually do that. I think they need to be in communication with each other, you know, either electronically or by letter. And if there's something really pressing, but for the most part, to sit there and strategize about this is not going to happen.
Okay, thank you. And the final question is actually one for Catherine. And Catherine, it says, do people treat you differently when they find out that you are on disability?
Well, I wouldn't say that I've actually felt as though I was treated differently, but at least not that I've noticed. But I have lost friends. That's, I think, something that a lot of IC patients can relate to. They drop away. You can't do what, you know, you make plans to go out and you have to cancel at the last minute because you're just having a really bad day. And so I've had to deal with the loss of friends more so than I would say people treating me in some sort of different manner. But I have, the ones that are left are my real and true friends that have stood by me through every illness and, you know, from IC to lung transplant. And they're the people that are worth keeping in your life. And I decided a long time ago that I was going to, if those people don't want to stand by me or and still be my friend, I have let that go. And if people don't understand my IC and they want to ask me about it because they don't get it, or, you know, why are you on disability, I'm more than happy to explain it to them and give them an answer as to how serious this is and why I'm on disability.
Thank you very much. Well, the ICA would like to thank you for your continued support in our mission to conquer IC and change lives. I also want to, IC would like to thank Catherine, Dr. Evans, and Ed for taking the time to educate us on the complex world of IC and disability. And if you need any further information on IC or you have any additional questions, please use the links that are provided either on the last slide or within the attachments. Have a wonderful night, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you.
Oh.
Thanks, Jennifer. Oh, I guess everybody's
Yeah, I guess we hung up.